Billionaire Mike Bloomberg is reportedly close to joining the Democratic primary as Wall Street panics about the current crop of candidates. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. It's hard to keep track of all the corruption swirling around President Trump, but on top of the impeachment inquiry and everything else, there was also this little item last week that went largely unnoticed. A judge ordered the President of the United States to pay $2 million for misusing funds from his charity for ridiculous purchases.
A New York judge ordering President Trump to pay $2 million for misusing Trump Foundation charitable funds. The president had vowed never to settle the lawsuit. The New York State Attorney General alleged the president used the charity's money to help his 2016 campaign pay business debts, even to buy a painting of himself.
That's right. Trump used charity money to buy a painting of himself, and this is the painting. Look at that. It looks like they hired Jackson Pollock to do a courtroom sketch. Almost as shocking as the settlement itself was the fact that Trump admitted wrongdoing. As part of the settlement, Trump acknowledged in a court filing that he had failed to follow basic laws about how charities should be governed. In a statement signed by Trump's attorney, the president admitted to poor oversight of the charity. And you know it must be bad because Trump never apologizes for anything. If he backed into your car in the parking lot, he'd leave a note on the windshield that said, "I won't pay for repairs, but here's a wallet-sized portrait of me. Signed, Donald Trump, I did nothing wrong." Now, if you're a Democratic primary voter, I know what you're thinking. You've been watching the rampant corruption of the Trump presidency, the catastrophic failure of the Trump administration, and the destructive influence the wealthy have had on politics. And you're saying to yourself, you know what can fix this? A different rich guy. Because if we've learned one thing from the past decade of politics, from the financial crisis to the Trump presidency, it's that rich people, with zero exceptions, know what they're doing. That's why they always do smart, sane things, like leaving all their money to their cats or going on a podcast and smoking weed like Elon Musk. That's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and he looks like a 10th grader at a sleepover. Welcome to the board meeting. First order of business, we're going to build a rocket to White Castle. So if you've been waiting for a billionaire alternative, your prayers have been answered because a billionaire is reportedly close to entering the race. A billionaire so charming and charismatic whose Spanish is so perfect, no one will be able to resist him.
Breaking news tonight, the bombshell just dropping in the 2020 race. Michael Bloomberg on the brink of entering the Democratic primary battle.
The spokesperson says Bloomberg is worried the current crop of Democratic candidates may not be able to defeat President Trump.
But a recent poll also shows that if Bloomberg were to enter the race, only 6% of Democratic primary voters say they definitely vote for him.
Bloomberg was the Republican mayor of New York City. Now he's running as a Democrat. How does he fit in?
Well, he'd run as a moderate, and he would run on his record as mayor.
While in office, he had a tendency to read statements at the end of his press conferences en español.
Hoy y mañana vamos a tener temperaturas extremadamente altas.
Ay, caramba, Miguel Bloomberg está running for presidente. Ay, Dios mío. That's right. Michael Bloomberg is reportedly close to jumping into the Democratic primary. You know, the guy who used to be a Democrat, then switched to Republican to run for mayor, then switched to independent after he became mayor, then went back to being a Democrat. I mean, that's how my mom orders at a restaurant. I'll have the fish. No, the chicken. You know what? Just come back. Do me last. Do me last. In reality, the vast majority of Democratic primary voters say in polls that they're actually satisfied with the choices they already have. In fact, there's already another billionaire in the race, Tom Steyer. Remember him? The guy who looks like even he's surprised he's running for president? He looks like a middle-aged dad who found his kid's acid and accidentally ate it. I cannot see my hands, and that wolf is talking to me. And just to give you an idea of how uninterested Democrats are in having another billionaire president, Steyer has remained mired in the low single digits in the polls, despite the fact that he spent $47 million during the first 3 months of his presidential bid. $47 million. Instead of running for president, he could have funded grassroots organizing or just offered that same money to Donald Trump to quit. You know Trump would take it. If Trump knew someone would be willing to pay him to resign, he'd probably start airing infomercials with the hotline 1-800-1-MAKE-ME-AN-OFFER. Call now and you can pay me to shut up. And if the price is right, I'll throw in a second, even dumber Donald Trump. So there just doesn't seem to be an appetite right now for another billionaire president to swoop in and save us from the current Democratic candidates. People want to change the system, but it's hard to convince someone that a system is broken when that system gave them billions of dollars. Remember the futile campaign of Starbucks founder Howard Schultz? He couldn't even announce his candidacy without getting yelled at.
Former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz got an earful from a protester at a New York City book signing Monday night after Schultz said he is seriously considering a possible independent run for the White House.
I am seriously considering running for president as a centrist independent. And I wanted to clarify the word independent, which I view merely as a designation on the ballot.
Don't help elect Trump, you egotistical billionaire.
That's what you get for announcing your campaign in New York City. Hey, Schultz, how about you take one of those cake pops and stick it up your ass? Let's go Mets! Now, billionaires are apparently worried about the leftward tilt of the current primary, and in particular, the candidacies of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. In fact, it was reported that Bloomberg had been coaxed by another, even wealthier billionaire. Vox reported that Jeff Bezos asked Michael Bloomberg months ago if he'd consider running for president. Wow, he just ordered up a presidential candidate. What level of Amazon Prime is that? Bloomberg's interest in running and Bezos' prodding come after weeks of billionaire freakouts over the possibility that someone who's critical of big banks and Wall Street, like Warren or Bernie, could get the Democratic nomination. In fact, last week, even Bill Gates expressed concern about how much he personally would have to pay in taxes and joked that he might not have that much left over.
You know, I've paid over $10 billion in taxes. I paid more than anyone in taxes. But I'm glad to have paid, if I'd had to pay $20 billion, it's fine. But, when you say I should pay $100 billion, okay, then I'm starting to do a little math about what I have left over. Sorry, I'm just kidding.
First of all, I think you got your math wrong, which would make sense because you probably used Excel. Second, we know you're kidding because you have incredible comic delivery and because you're worth over $100 billion. If Elizabeth Warren got elected president, no one thinks Bill Gates would be doing math on the back of a napkin at his kitchen table. Let's see, $6 billion in wealth taxes, another $10 billion in income taxes. Oh, that leaves me with $90 billion. That's barely enough to survive. I'm already cutting my own hair. And besides, even if Gates did run out of money, we know he'd have a successful career as a dancer, as we learned from a press conference announcing the launch of Windows 95. It looks like your accountant's Christmas party after someone spikes the punch. That's the bar mitzvah where the dads are trying to get the kids on the dance floor. Come on, guys! Doing the Macarena! Now, obviously, Gates' $100 billion tax estimate was ridiculous. In fact, to help him calculate how much he'd owe in taxes under her presidency, Warren added a calculator for the billionaires to her website with 2 custom links that say, if you're Michael Bloomberg, click here, and if you're Bill Gates, you can click here. Damn, she used the internet against Bill Gates. Next, she's gonna get Clippy to endorse her. And Bill Gates isn't the only billionaire freaking out about Warren's candidacy. Last week, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon criticized Warren for vilifying rich people.
She uses some pretty harsh words. Some would say vilifies successful people. So I don't like vilifying anybody. I think we should applaud successful people.
You have $1 billion and you also want applause? I thought the whole point of being rich was not having to care what people think of you. That's why they call it you money, not you, now give me a hug money. Dimon was also in 60 Minutes on Sunday. Dimon was asked about his salary last year, which came out to $31 million. And he was also pressed on whether he took any responsibility at all for J.P. Morgan's role in the financial crisis, which, of course, is one of the major reasons voters are so angry at Wall Street. And he changed his answer within seconds.
Do you take any responsibility for the financial crisis in 2008? But your bank sold those same kind of mortgages, toxic mortgages.
I do take some.
He's dancing around that question like Bill Gates in '95. People aren't just mad at billionaires out of jealousy or because candidates demonize them. They're real-world examples that are informing people's doubts that the wealthy can solve everything. Just take Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook recently announced that it won't fact-check political ads. And when Zuckerberg was grilled by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about that decision recently, he had no answers.
You announced recently that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation in 2020 elections and in the future. So I just want to know how far I can push this. Would I be able to run advertisements on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds here. What's fair game?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad.
Oh, really? Would that be bad? So if I said you didn't look like a cross between Data from Star Trek and a teenage Roman emperor, that would be bad? So the billionaires are freaking out about Warren and Bernie, but neither of them seem especially worried about it. Earlier this year, when Warren was asked about the reaction among billionaires to her candidacy, she had only a sarcastic response.
They're going to throw everything at it to stop this. How do you get from here to there?
Are you telling me that the billionaires are not in favor of my being president of the United States? Damn, you just upset every plan I had. I'm shocked.
Sarcastic Elizabeth Warren is like the teacher catching you smoking out back behind the high school. Wow, smoking is so cool. You know what else is cool? Emphysema. You know what the girls like? Yellow teeth and skin. All right, I'll see you guys back in class. Then there's Bernie. Last month, Bernie went on CNBC to make the case that Wall Street should pay more to reduce income inequality. And at one point, he referred to his, quote, friends on Wall Street.
At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, it is my view that the wealthiest people in this country, the top 1/10 of 1%, should be paying substantially more than they're paying right now. You have an insane situation. And let my Wall Street friends there tell me why it makes sense.
You have Wall Street friends?
No, I don't. That was just a metaphor. I was trying to sound nice, I know.
Of course Bernie doesn't have Wall Street friends. I'm guessing that unless you're a member of the Vermont Food Co-op or the Burlington Y, you're not friends with Bernie at all. I go swimming at 5 a.m. and then I do a shift at the co-op and then I go home and I don't talk to anybody. And I'm glad Bernie admitted that, because if there's one thing we've all learned from the billionaires, it's that
lying is bad.
Yeah. We're living in an unprecedented era of massive inequality, and there's an incredible hunger among voters for a candidate who will fight for systemic change. Voters don't seem to want a self-appointed billionaire savior to ride in and save them. And if you think you're that savior, you might actually just be a
egotistical billionaire.
This has been A Closer Look.